I just finished watching The Odyssey by Christopher Nolan, and I also finished reading Emily Wilson's translation of The Odyssey, and I enjoyed them both a lot. I mean, it's a really good literary piece. The movie I thought was fantastic, but I also learned a lot of how I can apply this to my life as a student and as a budding professional. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you the 3 things that I learned from The Odyssey that are helping me in my day-to-day life as a student and as a young professional in the tech industry. Hi, my name is Logan Hansen, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm a student at BYU trying to live a fulfilling and goal-driven life with all the ambitions that I have while still having time to connect with those that I love. I'm a huge fan of Ryan Holiday, and on his Instagram recently, he was posting about how the Odyssey isn't necessarily just a fantastical story or something that's meant to be historically accurate, but something that we should learn from. That we're on our own Odyssey in our life, and that there are things we can learn from the story that we can apply to continue to live a more fulfilling life. The way I want to approach telling you about what we can learn about the Odyssey is first explaining a little bit about the trials that Odysseus goes through, how the movie and the book portrays them, and then sharing with you the lessons that we can learn as students from that. The first of those stories and challenges being the Sirens. Now, in the movie, I loved the depiction of the Sirens. I honestly love that we didn't get to hear the song that the Sirens sing. Christopher Nolan almost lets us struggle with the crewmates as Matt Damon listens and seems to be almost in anguish as he's listening to the song of the Sirens, but leaves us wondering, what did he hear? What did he really listen to? In the movie, the character Odysseus describes what he heard in the best way that he knows how, and says, "It was all the things you wanted to be, and then all the things you wished you never wished for. It told you what you most want is what you most can't have, and that the most you can't have is what you already had and lost. It was a song of all the promises I failed to keep." In this moment during the movie, I was just floored and amazed by the literary genius of Christopher Nolan to put this in the script and to include this Song of the Siren in a way that allows us to really think and ponder what the Song of the Siren means and how did Homer want us to interpret this for our lives. Emily Wilson in the book as well, when she's translating the Odyssey, Odysseus describes it in a similar way. I'm going to paraphrase this, but basically he said the song was so melodious and he wanted to listen to more, and he begged his men on the ship to set him free, but they kept rowing on even when he was yelling at them and telling them, "Set me free, I need to go see this song." And then his friends even stood up with wax in their ears they couldn't hear and tied him to the mast even tighter so that Odysseus couldn't get away. And only once they had finally sailed past the siren song was he loosed and able to reflect on his experience listening to the sirens. Now, this challenge and this story is very famous. You've most likely heard it, but there's a couple lessons that I took from that I wanted to share with you. The first being that there is power in being content. I think we live in a day and age that makes it almost impossible, at least very difficult, to not compare yourself to other people, right? Even on LinkedIn or Instagram, I hop on and I look at some of my peers who are starting businesses, who are already millionaires, who have the life that I'm dreaming to build. And it's hard for me to sit back and say, am I moving too slow? Am I struggling? But in Christopher Nolan's depiction of the sirens, he says that the siren song was something that told you everything you wanted to have but couldn't have. And that what you most wanted was something that you actually already had but had lost. And I think what Christopher Nolan is trying to tell us here, and what the Odyssey is teaching us, is that it's important to be content with the things we have, to be in the present moment, to enjoy the life that we have. When I was looking up statistics, the age of the average millionaire in America is 61. I'm only 23. I have so much time to get to that point. The average age of the retiree is, no surprise, 65. Some people are trying to retire early at 35, 45, and good for them, but that's their story. And the average age of the business owner when they started their business was around 35 to 45. I put a lot of pressure on myself to try to start a business, make income, to make more money, to live the life I want. And the truth is, I have so much time. I have a decade before I even reach the younger end of that spectrum. And my guess is, so do you. The second thing I learned from the Song of the Sirens is that your integrity is everything. In Christopher Nolan's depiction of it, he said, "It was the song of all the promises I failed to keep." And when you watch the movie, as Matt Damon is telling this from the perspective of Odysseus, he seems to be in anguish tied to this mast, just crying and yelling. And his friend looks on, like, very curious of why he's in so much pain. But when I think back on my life, the biggest moments of pain came from the times where I broke trust, where I broke promises that I had made. And I learned from the Song of the Sirens after reading the book and watching the movie that your word is your bond. Integrity is everything. And the third and final thing that I wanted to share that I learned from the Song of the Sirens is that discipline can be painful. In Emily Wilson's translation of it, his men had to come and tie more knots around him on the mast. And now when you think about being on the mast of a ship in the middle of the Mediterranean, there's salt water, it's cold, the water's freezing, and you're tied to this mast while the wind is blowing right in your direction. Your friends to come and tie tight, like twine rope around your wrists would just rub them raw with all the water around your wrists and the twine while you're getting blasted with this cold wind and this cold water while listening to this song of sirens that you want to go to. Those are the temptations that are all around us. And sometimes discipline can be painful, but it's so necessary. It's hard to wake up early in the morning to get to the gym. It's hard to hop off Instagram when you're getting those hits of dopamine, but you know you should be doing something else. It's hard to sit and be bored when really that's what drives creativity. It's hard to get a bad grade on a test or assignment and not think poorly about yourself. But the truth is, all those temptations only steer you further and further off course. Discipline can be painful, but it's a superpower. The next story that I want to share with you was about the Lotus Eaters and Calypso. Now, there's a slight difference I found between the book and the movie with this story. Emily Wilson translates this story as almost two separate stories, where the crew has to escape the Lotus Eaters first, and then the encounter between Odysseus and Calypso is its own thing. In Christopher Nolan's depiction of the Odyssey, Calypso feeds Odysseus lotus flowers to keep him trapped on the island. In any case, the point of the lotus flowers is to cloud the mind and make an individual forget why they were trying to get home or what they longed for most. Calypso wants to keep Odysseus on her island and promises him immortality and a life forever with her on an island. Now, one of the biggest things I learned from this story is that there will just be things in life sometimes that trap you and that pull you off course, right? Life is hard. There's a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes the downs are just inevitable. And so it's important to set realistic expectations that while I am ambitious and I do want to progress towards my goals, there's going to be things sometimes that just knock me off course and keep me trapped for a little while. The biggest question to ask when that happens is, how am I going to get back on course? Now, both the movie and the text aren't super clear and don't tell us explicitly what is Odysseus' main motivation for getting back to Ithaca, although Emily Wilson does allude to something that could be a possible explanation that I find very convincing. She says that Odysseus longs to recover his own identity, not as a victim of shipwreck or a coddled plaything of a powerful goddess, but as a master of his home and household, as a father and as a husband. When I read this, it kind of hit me like a brick that one of the key things to staying on track and staying on the course towards your goals is having a clear vision of who you are and getting clear about your identity. Odysseus knows that he's a father to Telemachus, and he knows that he's the husband to Penelope, and he knows he has a kingdom waiting for him back in Ithaca, and he longs to go and fill his role as a king, as a leader, as a father, and as a husband. If there are labels that you put on yourself that are helpful and powerful and motivating to you, even when you get knocked off course and when things kind of bring you down, you'll be able to reflect back on that identity and pull yourself back up, to rediscipline yourself, to get off whatever island you're trapped on, get back on a ship, and keep going through hardships to progress towards your goals. So I would encourage you to take some time and write down and reflect and journal who it is that you are and what it is you want. When you're clear on your identity, nothing can stand in your way. Now, the third lesson that I learned from the Odyssey that I wanted to share didn't come from one single story, but rather from pretty much all of them. And that's the power of having options, right? When they're trapped in the Cyclops' cave, Odysseus doesn't resign himself to the fate of being eaten alive by the Cyclops, but he looks for options. He blinds the Cyclops and ties his men under sheep and makes the Cyclops think that they're just still stuck in the cave. With the Trojan War, when they see they can't find a way to get through the city walls, they build a giant horse and hide in it and let the Trojans pull themselves into danger. Even when it comes to Charybdis, the whirlpool, and Scylla, the mountain monster, I saw a funny post on Instagram of someone who said, I don't understand why they had to pick one or the other. Why didn't they just go left of the whirlpool and go around on the other side of the ocean? And I had to laugh, but it's honestly true. There's always so many options in front of us. I think it's so easy to get stuck in this two-option mindset and mentality all the time. I can either take this class or this class. I can either take this job or that job. I can take this major or that major. I can either accept this job offer or take no job offer at all. Something my mentor likes to tell his team whenever they get stuck in this two-option mentality is an option is to get in the car, drive to Milwaukee, and punch the first person you see in the face. Which sounds ridiculous, but it means that every other option in between right here and punching that person in the face is also an option. So when you're stuck and you catch yourself in this two-option mentality and thinking there's only option A or B, I would take a minute to list out your options, and oftentimes you'll find that you can come up with options C, D, E, F, G, and so on. And sometimes option Z, for example, is the best option, ends up being the one you go with. So my biggest takeaways from the Odyssey is that when things don't work out, there's always a way back on course. Negotiate with people, ask questions, get curious, try to find and see options where other people don't see them. The truth is, we're all living our own individual Odyssey. You and I both have goals and ambitions, and we're trying to create this life that we feel pleased and happy with. So if you eliminate distractions, get clear about who you are, and just start walking and look for the options around you, things will work out. And it may take decades and years to get to where you're trying to go, but if you're clear about where you're headed, nothing will stand in your way. Ultimately, I love the Odyssey. It's such a good story, and I'm really grateful that we have now a movie depiction as well as so many other translations to learn from Homer. I would highly encourage you to pick up a copy or go watch the movie and think beyond just the artistry of it, but also think, how can I apply this to my life? What is my Odyssey? What are the distractions that get in my way? And then get to work. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from this video, and I'm happy to see you in the next one. Have a great day.